Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at what potentially looks like an absolute disaster of a CPU cooler. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so on today's video we'll be taking a look at a CPU cooler from the people up at UpHere. Yeah, the packaging isn't brilliant. But this did take my eye. It's got 5 heat pipes on there, relatively good price, ARGB fans, etc. So I figured I'd take a look, and I've actually taken it out of the box, had a quick look already, and I'll be completely honest with you, I'm shocked. Shocked how bad it appears to be on first glances. But as always, we don't know the full story until we've actually tested it. So what we'll do in this video is we'll do an unboxing, go through some of the potential pitfalls, then I'm going to install it on the system behind me. I don't want to install it on anything more high powered than that, purely because I am scared of this cooler. Then after we've done the testing, we'll come back, and if my system hasn't died, then I'll report back with my findings and hopefully be pleasantly surprised, but the odds are stacked against it. Now to start off with, UpHere as a brand, we've had their other fans and actually very pleased with them, and they've actually sold like hotcakes, and a lot of other YouTubers have picked up on them and actually found them to be pretty decent for the value for money proposition. This could change things altogether. So let's take it out of the box and see what we've actually got. Now it doesn't have any specifications on the box, so I will be reading those out shortly from the Amazon website where I've got most of the information from, because again, there is essentially nothing on here. But it does appear to come quite well packaged. We've got this really nice thick styrofoam, which in theory should keep things nice and safe and secure in the packaging. We've got a decent accessories bag, which we'll take a look at shortly. Also as well, there is a installation guide, which again, all credit to them, actually does lay everything out in very, very simple terms. And actually I would say this is possibly one of the best installation guides I've seen in a long, long time. And last of all, we get the actual cooler itself. So as you can see, this is very similar to things like the Cooler Master, all those kinds of things, Freezer 34, basically pretty much all 120mm tower coolers. The thing that kind of sets this apart slightly is the fact that on the base we've got these direct access heat pipes, and there's 5 of them, which is a slight upgrade over the normal 4 that we tend to get, or sometimes even 3. Also on the front, obviously, we've got a addressable RGB fan, which is 5V addressable RGB with the standard 5V connection, and also you get the 4-pin PWM connector. Also on the top there is some more splashes of RGB, which hopefully you'll see from some of the B-roll I've already filmed. And essentially at first glances, at £30, which is what this costs at the moment here on Amazon.co.uk, again, affiliated links in the video description, for 30 quid, it doesn't seem too bad. Obviously, you can get the same sort of thing from places like Alibaba, etc. for considerably cheaper, but then you have to wait for ages. This arrived pretty much next day from Amazon, so it was worth the extra money. Well, potentially. So the fan itself clips on relatively easily. You've got these nice spring clips which have all been blacked out. The whole thing is pretty much blacked out as well, which is quite nice, so it gives you that stealthy look. And the fan is easily removable. There's a little bit of extra wiring there for the RGB, which goes to the top. So you have got a little bit of a wiring mess here to contend with. We just disconnect that shortly. That really didn't want to come off of there. So as you can see, got a pretty regular type of 120mm fan. The rated specs of it are around about 500 RPM up to a top of 1800 RPM, and they rate it as being somewhere between 15 and 25 decibels. Although it doesn't particularly look like it's an overly well engineered fan, but certainly when we get to testing, we'll do some sound tests and all that kind of stuff and see what it's like. Effectively in this room, the ambient noise floor is around about 30 decibels. So in theory, flat out, this shouldn't be any louder than the ambient noise, which I severely doubt. So on the fan, you've got, like I said before, you've got the connectors, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there is a little bit of extra wire in there, which is going to be possibly a little bit tricky to cable manage, but not the end of the world. The fan itself's got rubber grommets, or stabilizing bits, both sides, so that's a nice thing to see. And also the fact that the blades are opaque, so the RGB is going to spill out quite nicely. Again, you've probably seen that from some of the B-roll we've shown already. Another nice touch is on the back, the actual kind of spiral shape for the arms which does help with actually concentrating airflow rather than having it diffuse, that kind of thing. So it looks like they have done a little bit of research on the fan, but will it be enough? So looking at the actual tower itself, as you can see, it's all been finished in this quite nice satin matte black finish, and you've got the RGB plastic top, which doesn't look like it comes off particularly easily, so we'll leave that in place as it is. Looking at the bottom again, we've got the 5 heat pipes visible there, and this is where it all kind of falls apart. Now normally when you have one of these type of setups, the cold plate here is generally soldered to the actual heat pipes in order to transfer the heat efficiently. Now when I was doing some of the early B-rolls, I was looking at it and it looked like there's a slight offset, which again you may or may not be able to see, but there is a very, very slight offset to one side, which I thought that's fine because a slight offset will give you a better chance of having RAM clearance from your fan. But I've got to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure if that is intentional. Potentially it could actually be either a manufacturing defect or, quite simply, it's been dropped. There didn't seem to be any obvious signs of damage from the packaging, as you can see. So I looked a little bit further and it appeared to me that the cold plate wasn't actually firmly attached to the heat pipes. So having a closer look, I realised that actually it wasn't, and if I pull that down, you can see it just pops off, which that really isn't meant to happen. That should be soldered, and that is essentially how it's produced. So there's the cold plate, and as you can see, and I'll give you some close-ups of that as well, you can see there is not a hint of solder on there whatsoever, and also some of the spray painting is actually missed on the side there. So attention to detail is definitely something they're clearly lacking. And removing the protective thing on there, you can see that the heat pipes themselves, because of the offset of the pipes, these are supposed to be flat, but essentially it's kind of ridged all the way along, and just rubbing your finger along the top, your nails get stuck in every single one. So this is supposed to be pretty much as flat as physically possible, so there's a really good gap, or lack of a gap even, between your top of your processor and the cooler itself. So I have actually got some sandpaper out and give it a very, very brief sand, but really you shouldn't have to do that, not in this day and age. It should be manufactured correctly. Now I am tempted to get another one of these through the post and see if they're all like it or not. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting in testing to see if this kind of ridged section here is actually going to affect the cooling temperatures vastly. I would think it would, although if you use enough heat paste then it will kind of settle in there and actually pack that out. So things aren't looking great to start off with, so let's put that back on. It does appear that one side is actually got a kind of lip on there, so I think it is actually an intentional design. I could be wrong. So let's try and get that back on. So if you are buying one of these and you're not particularly into DIY, then you may want to look elsewhere. Yeah, that doesn't want to go back on now. It does fit on in one particular way, which fails me at the moment. But you can see that this is not great. And yeah, it is proving to be very, very tricky to get back on. Let's try the other side first. This could take a while. Nope, it's slightly offset. We'll look at that a little bit later because that is a pain in the backside, and obviously it shouldn't come through like that and it shouldn't be as poorly made as that, but anyway, let's move on. So you do get the spring clips included, and let's take a look at the accessories bag. It's a real shame that is manufactured as it is because the rest of this looks like it's a really good deal. So for mounting purposes, you've got 2 of these plates. One of them goes on the back, so you've got the foam section there which goes on the back of the motherboard, and then you've got the top plate which goes on the front of the motherboard. And that is actually really nicely done. There is a really clear and precise instructions on how to do it. So you've got these little bars which push through the back. So from the foam section, looking at the dots on the back, work out which one is for your particular processor, stick it through, and there is a very, very small indentation actually on the screw. So once it's through, all you need to do is just twist it a little bit until it sits in properly, and then it won't spin round whilst it's in use. So that itself, I really like that. It's quite a nice mechanism, and it makes it easy because it's basically the same setup for all of the processors, so whether it's Intel 775 or LGA 1200 or FM1 or AM4, pretty much everything works in exactly the same way. You just put the pins in a slightly different way. So let's get that locked into place. So that is your back plate, so that goes through the back of the motherboard, and then once that's in place, there are some spacers which are universal across the range, so 4 black spacers, and all you do is put those on the top. Obviously you'd have your motherboard in between this. So that's your spacers done. Then you put the top plate on, and then there is a set of thumb screws to actually hold that all in place. So that is the kind of like the mounting system all ready to go. Just screw those onto there. And again, this, I like the idea of having the tiny little notch there to stop these bars spinning. There's been quite a few manufacturers over the years, I've seen cheaper coolers, and they've left that out altogether, so you get to a point it just spins around in the actual mechanism. So once that's all done, you can kind of tighten those up, and then you're ready to basically attach the cooler to it. So I'll take this off so you can see it a little bit easier. So 2 screws, which are spring loaded, and essentially you're kind of tightening up onto that bracket. So yeah, actually a really nice, easy way of doing things. And again, it's the same setup for all of the different chipsets and also processors. So yeah, Intel, you're looking at 775, 1366, 115X, etc, etc. AMD, AM2, FM1, AM3, AM4, potentially AM5, who knows. So yeah, overall, actually a pretty decent setup and relatively straightforward to do. But what really does concern me is this cold plate. That is definitely not a good sign, and the fact that the heat pipes on the bottom is basically like a ridged roof or like a tiled roof. There's a crazy amount of offset there, which I wish I actually had something I could put on there to show you, but I tried with a ruler. You can kind of get an idea. You can see daylight come through pretty much straight away, so it isn't flat in any way, shape or form. But whether or not that is going to affect cooling performance, there's only one way to find out, and yeah, I'm going to have to do that now, unfortunately. So we're going to come away from this now, test this, see how bad it potentially is, and hopefully not wreck my processor. So we'll be back after that. Okay, so we finished doing the testing, and it's not an entire failure. It's not as bad as I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be absolutely horrendous, but actually with the Ryzen 5 3600 with precision boost overclocking turned on, no other tweaks to the system whatsoever, so basically boost into whatever it can, all that kind of usual stuff. We got some reasonable temperatures, so lows 33 degrees C, this is in a 24 degree ambient room, so not too bad, and pretty much what I was expecting. Even with a water cooler, generally the lowest temperatures always seem to be around about the mid 30s anyway, so no problems there. Noise wise, quite happy to say that it is pretty quiet. At the round about 800 RPM, it's silent. At around about 1000, you start to notice it slightly, and at full whack 1800, yeah, it sounds like a hurricane, which yeah, you'd expect it full whack, and it did get to full whack. Now on my MSI motherboard, this is the B550 Gaming Pro Wi-Fi, I normally set it so that all the fans will ramp up to 100% at 70 degrees. I don't want my processors getting beyond 70 degrees no matter what. Which was unfortunate because we did exceed 70 degrees in yeah, quite a few instances. So within Cinebench we got to around about 72, 73 degrees I think it was. Again, I'll put some footage up so you can see what it reached. It isn't awful. It does kind of keep the temperatures in check. Running Prime 95, as I did a little bit later on, we got to around about 76 degrees, and it got to the point where it was kind of 76, 75, 76, 75. So we kind of maxed out thermally where we were. Frequency-wise on the processor, didn't see any throttling or anything like that, so it's kind of doing its job. It's not as good as it should be though. Certainly coolers like the Snowman, which we've reviewed before, which you can check out up here. Definitely things like the Freezer 34, anything along those lines is slightly better, slightly lower temperatures. Again, with Snowman, I think we got to the kind of upper 60s, maybe 70. So it's around about 5 to 6, maybe 7 degrees hotter than it should be, which isn't disastrous. I was expecting with that flat bottom to be a lot worse. Now, if we put this onto a more scientific test and we laid out all the processors that we tested and all the temperatures, then it would certainly stick out as being possibly one of the worst ones we've tested, especially for the particular size and the capacity of the cooler. So definitely that base plate isn't doing the job it should do. Certainly temperatures, when it's not under load, it drops down as you expect with a 120mm cooler. Generally they do very well. But under those load temperatures, I would have liked to have seen it about 5, maybe 6 degrees less to be competitive with others on the market. And certainly it's nowhere near as good as a AIO. So that is something to consider. Now, obviously, when it comes to noise and RGB, as you can see, it's still in the system behind me and it's actually working and it looks really nice. It's a relatively sharp looking piece of kit. I actually really do like the looks of it. It's just unfortunate that that base plate isn't done as well as it should be, and that essentially comes down to manufacturing techniques. Now, I am going to send this one back to Amazon and get a replacement and see if it does confirm my findings. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same. It might be the fact that if I order another one now, if they come from the same batch, then they may all suffer from the same thing. Please do let me know if you've got one of these particular UpHere coolers or a derivative of this. Let me know, is your setup the same? Can you quite easily pop off that cold plate on the bottom? I'd be really interested to know. And actually, as like a public service announcement, it'd be good if we get some information together and actually see if it is a common thing or whether this is pretty much a one-off or a batch issue. I'm certainly going to be emailing UpHere as well, just to see if we can get any response from them, get any feedback, and if I do, then I'll put it into the pinned comment at the top of the video. So if there's any feedback from them, then obviously we'll let you know. But as far as it stands, I can't write it off entirely, as much as I would really love to, because I'm a little bit disappointed, but I have to remain objective. It works, it does what it wants to do. It's not the best cooler out there. It doesn't perform better than others in its class, obviously due to the manufacturing techniques of that flat base bottom, which is, yeah, essentially just like a jagged edge if you put it underneath a microscope. So it's not the best of setups, but certainly if you're using a Ryzen 5 round about the 3600 range, or maybe a slightly older processor, Ryzen 5 2600, and maybe you're trying to make a system look a bit blingy to flip it, then certainly it's worth looking at. But there are others out there at £30. Again, is it worth the money? Is it worth spending a little bit more and going for something a little bit more branded, such as, again, Arctic Freezer 34, possibly a gelid cooler, those kinds of things. So there are other brands on the market which are manufactured to, I would say, tighter tolerances. But anyway, I've babbled on for way too long. You've had the information. This is one to potentially look out for. Do check yours if you're buying one. I'll put some affiliated links in the video description below, so if you want to check out it for yourself, you can do. All I'll say is, obviously, it is a kind of mass manufactured, effectively a cheapo cooler. So don't be spending too much on it, and I would certainly look around before you buy one. Anyway, that's going to wrap this one up. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.